Welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg, and this will be my final program before Thanksgiving, which of course is tomorrow. We do have some pretty good news from Gaza, Israel. I won't say it's great news. There isn't a ceasefire right now. There isn't an agreement to enter into long-term peace negotiations. Israel hasn't apologized for or acknowledged that it's persecuting the Palestinian people, and that has been an ongoing human rights violation for decades. So that would be really good news. But it's still good news that Israel and Hamas are working together right now to cinch the details of the ceasefire and hostage deal that the New York Times is reporting. And I think it says 8 minutes ago, so I copied this maybe an hour ago. So obviously there may be some new breaking news that's even more updated, but I'm giving you what I have. And if you want to join me, 240-363-7190. If you have a question about Thanksgiving, I'm going to respond to one I saw in the Lever, or the Lever. I'm not sure how they pronounce it. It was actually emailed to me and a promotional. This is Halitics. Please click like. Please click subscribe. I've seen my subscriber numbers inch up a little bit. It's been a struggle. It's been harder than I thought to get more and more folks to join. I ask those of you who do watch, who do listen, Jeff, you know who you are, to please share. Jeff is my resident troll. I say that with love. I will respond to some of his criticisms of my program perhaps on Friday in the free-for-all. But you know what? Hey, if you want to find people who are going to disagree with me and post pointed, slams, go ahead. Do it. I just would, more and more viewers is what I want, more and more commentators, and certainly callers. 240-363-7190. So I just want to talk briefly. We'll talk about Israel and Hamas. We're going to talk about some of is it a blacklist? Does Hollywood now have a new blacklist going, back at 70 plus, almost 80 years ago? If you had been affiliated with a Communist Party cell, you had gone to a Communist Party meeting, you had written something that could be interpreted as maybe suggesting that we need to fight for world peace and to reduce wealth and income inequality. If you had done any of those things 75, 80 years ago, and you were working in the movie industry, you might find yourself out of a job. That was the blacklist. I'm wondering if we've got a new one. If you criticize Israel, if you write or say something that staunch, I don't like to use the word Zionist. I think that can be considered a legitimately used by anti-Semites. So I don't love that term, but if you do something that an Israelophile doesn't like, you could find yourself out of a job in Hollywood. Is this the new blacklist? We'll talk about that as well. And we're going to end with, as I mentioned, a letter to an advice columnist about Thanksgiving. If you have a question about Thanksgiving, please do join me. 240-363-7190. All right. So it looks like somewhere around 50 hostages held by Hamas right now are due to be released shortly, assuming this deal goes through, and 150 Palestinian women and children who are currently being jailed in Israel will be released in return. So that's a good thing. What's not good, of course, is that Netanyahu said this is just temporary. We're going to continue to clear Gaza of any Hamas militants. Who knows how they even know if you're a Hamas militant? Do they have pictures of all of them? I'm trying to understand. They go door to door. They go, they bomb house to house, hospital to hospital. So when are they going to know for sure there are no more Hamas militants in Gaza? That's a question I'd like someone to ask Netanyahu. But anyway, that's his position. But for now, I don't want to be too negative, too critical, too cynical. For now, it does look like the killing, and I want to say the killing by Israel of Palestinians will stop. I know people call this a war. I always think of wars between two armies. The Great War, World War I. You had the French and British armies on the Western Front, and later on the American armies facing off against the Germans. Those were two very powerful forces. The Civil War, you had two powerful armies in uniform. They were meeting up with the latest technology. And each army represented a pretty sizable population. But what's going on in Gaza is not a war between Gazans and Israelis. It is a slaughter of Gazans by Israelis. They would say, well, we're fighting Hamas, but Hamas it's even been called a terrorist group. You don't have a war with a terrorist group. You arrest them. You seek criminal charges against the leaders and the soldiers in it. And I use the term soldier as the term is used by the mafia and organized crime. People who are basically civilians, but in their day-to-day lives, their job is to go out and work for a organized crime outfit. So that's kind of what at least Israel claims Hamas is. So the term war doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. It's more of a slaughter, as I mentioned. Were the Nazis making war during the Holocaust against Jews? Or were they just simply killing them when they lined people up outside pits in Belarus and Ukraine and Russia and shot people so that they fell into pits? Or they herded them into gas chambers? Was that a war? Because that's kind of what maybe a better example was the Warsaw Uprising. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, when the Jews in the ghetto who were able to get some weaponry that had either been smuggled in or that they had taken from the SS and the Gestapo and the German army, were they fighting a war against the Nazis? To me, a war suggests, implies, requires some sort of equality, relative, qualitative similarity between two forces. That's not what's happening here. Israel is routing out those people who live in Gaza. So I don't call it a war. But anyway, there'll be a ceasefire. Netanyahu, we hope. Netanyahu says it will. The killing will resume shortly by Israel. Now, what this ceasefire does, in my opinion, besides hopefully at least gives a little bit of breathing room for the people of Gaza, and of course more, also more to the point, because this is why Israel's doing it, gets some of the hostages freed, and that is a beautiful thing. And also the women and children being held by Israel will also be freed, although I don't know how free they're going to go back right to Gaza, or maybe to the West Bank, where they will continue to be persecuted, but still they won't be in jail. So that's a positive. So yes, the hostage prisoner exchange is good. The ceasefire, the temporary cessation of hostilities is good. Much, much better would be long-term peace negotiations. Now, what I have said on this program, I even asked the question, are we complicit? Because my argument has been that the United States government, rather than doing everything that's possible to stop the killing, to end the persecution, has been helping Israel, right? Has been supporting the Israeli occupation. And that makes us complicit. That's been my argument. And that we not only have helped Israel, but we also have the power to stop Israel, to stop the killing, the persecution, that we as a nation, because we are Israel's by far most powerful, most staunchest ally. I know the Brits and the French are there with Israel too. I get all that. But they look to us for materiel, for financial support. Israel does. They look to us for everything, moral support. And I've said, if we said to Israel, if Congress passed a law that said no more help to Israel until they stop persecuting Palestinians, then the persecution would stop. If Biden said, I'm not going to ask for any more financial support or military support of Israel until you stop persecuting and killing Palestinians. The killing and persecutions would stop. And I think what we're seeing in the ceasefire is how true that really, really, really is. Because what you are seeing now is the ceasefire only likely, and I don't want to overdo it, only likely coming to fruition because of pressure by Biden. Pressure on Biden, and then pressure by Biden. So those who have camped out outside the Democratic National Committee, those who have been calling their representatives in Congress and demanding a ceasefire, Aaron Monte making a pest of himself and irritating Chris Coons on a train, saying, why aren't you supporting a ceasefire, Senator Coons? Maybe, just maybe, that's had an impact. And Congress has gone to Biden and said, look, the Democrats in Congress, even the centrists, the so-called centrists, who are really, the neocons and neolibs, pro-war, pro-corporate Democrats have gone to Biden and said, look, we're hearing it. This isn't going to be great next year in the elections for us. We're probably in better shape as if you look at the specials this year. We're probably going to win, but push for peace. It'll help us electorally. So assuming that's all true, and I think there's good reason to believe it, then these actions have helped. The pro-peace actions that I have called for, and to a degree, I not as much as perhaps I should have, but certainly have been pushing. Maybe these really are making a difference. I hope they are. I really, really do. But regardless, some pressure brought to bear on Joe Biden caused him to call up Netanyahu and say, you got to do something here. You got to stop the killing, at least for a period of time. You got to bring those hostages, some of them, home. The hostages who, by the way, the families of the hostages who, by the way, have demanded a ceasefire, have said, hey, stop the killing. The people who you think would be most angry, most resentful, most demanding vengeance upon Hamas have said to Netanyahu and the Israel Defense Force, hey, stop all the killing talk. Let's focus on the living. Stop talking about vengeance. And let's work on saving the civilians, the citizens of Israel who are being held prisoner. So maybe, just maybe, that's made a difference. So the pressure on Biden caused Biden to go to Netanyahu. And what I've said is only by U.S. pressure on Israel will anything good happen. Will the killing stop? And you can see that is correct. That it's not just that pressure on Biden caused him to go to Netanyahu. It's pressure by Biden that brought about this very close to a deal. So Israel's acceptance, apparently accepted the terms where 50 Israeli hostages will be released, 150 women and children on both sides, 150 women and children who are Palestinians held in Israel, 50 women and children of Israelis held by, and I think some are American actually, being held by Hamas will also be released. So this reflected the intense pressure brought by the Biden administration. And Biden says, hey, I don't know how much longer I can keep getting you all the weaponry that you're using. I don't know how much longer we can keep giving you financial support, Bibi, unless you do something to de-escalate. And you can see the Times says there, this is the New York Times, produce potential longer-term opportunities to de-escalate. So we have to keep the pressure on. If we want to save lives and prevent, and I think this could really be, and some have said it, this could be Armageddon time, right? I mean, that's where it's in the Bible. I had the Johnny Cash song about, the Armageddon, and Alpha and Omega. Now I can't remember the song. Great song. One of his best, and a very recent, from him, 21st century song. So if we don't want to see the world end, we do need to keep the pressure on Israel. And it looks like maybe that will happen. Let's hope. All right, if you want to join me, 240-363-7190. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to talk to you on the day before Thanksgiving, so please do chime in. And don't forget, if you haven't yet, click like. In the bottom right of your screen, there should be a little blue and white square. If you haven't yet clicked it, I think if you have clicked it, it may not be there. I'm not really sure how that all works, but pretty sure that those who are not yet subscribed but are watching this video at any time, don't have to be live, you click subscribe and you'll become a subscriber. It's just that simple. You also might want to click the get the notifications, get alerts, because I always post before I go live what my latest program is going to be about. And the advantage for doing that, especially with my show, because I subscribe to a lot of other hosts, and most of them I don't get the notifications because it doesn't really matter when I watch. I can watch The Hill Rising, when it first comes live, or I can watch it an hour later, I can watch it a day later. It doesn't really matter. But when you watch Halitics Live, you have a unique opportunity to talk to me. You see the phone number right on the screen. So that's why you might want to get the notifications.